I think the greatest strengths of the Charter are that it is enforceable, it has teeth.
Written into the Charter is an enforcement section, giving the document its strength. The public is guaranteed a voice if rights are violated. But the system isn't perfect. Mounting a legal challenge of any kind is a daunting task. Mounting a charter appeal can involve years of litigation, yet the language of the Charter is confronted regularly.
You know, I can recall at the time when the Charter was first debated, when it was first going through, making speeches and pleading with my audiences, don't forget political pressure. Don't put all of your eggs in the Charter basket. Please, if you see violations of fundamental civil liberties, raise political hell about it. Don't leave it to the courts to resolve for us.
Well, I suppose ultimately what a Canadian does if he or she feels his charter right has been violated is ultimately you go to court. Unfortunately, that's a rather expensive and time-consuming process. But there are advocacy groups who take up the cases of those whose rights have been violated.
There's a number of things that they can do. One is to, go to a human rights office and speak with a human rights officer about it. The issue. Alternatively, they can also seek remedy through the courts.
You know, media may have its shortcomings, but media is the second area that individuals, ordinary citizens have to turn to, must turn to, should turn to be able to enforce their rights.
French and English language rights are guaranteed in the Charter. The public may seek help through Dr. Adam's office when issues regarding language rights occur.
This is my role as Commissioner of Official Languages to protect and promote linguistic rights and to do linguistic duality in Canada.
I think the Charter has certainly played a role in ensuring that minorities have rights, but I do believe that in particular racial minorities have been more reluctant to exercise their rights. And we've got to work a lot harder at ensuring that they can actually get access to those rights through the courts and through programs like the Court Challenges program.
The Court Challenges program provides financial assistance for court cases advancing language and equality rights. Though challenges to the Charter are often in the headlines, many Canadians take their rights and freedoms for granted.
Occasionally, I think we are a little bit too complacent about the rights and freedoms we enjoy and the nature of our democracy when the majority of people in the world do not enjoy the same level of democratic and legal rights.
Canadians now take the Charter for granted. In my judgment, this is a good thing. It tells me that the Charter has become a settled part of our national life. The entrenchment of the Charter is the most profoundly democratic declaration in our history.
Thank you.
Canada's Charter of Rights and Freedoms reflects diversity and respect. It has the advantage of being drafted in the last century.
The Charter is quite a new project when you think of human history, very new. It has the advantage of being a very late comer on the scene. Other constitutions, that the American Constitution was written back in the 1700s, so Canada has come up recently had the opportunity to come up with a charter with a constitution that has been able to take into account the lessons learned from all kinds of countries and all kinds of places.
The Soviet Union, for example, had probably one of the most wonderful constitutions in the world, but it proved to be meaningless. The Indian government has a wonderful constitution. I come from India, and it's beautifully worded, secular and democratic and whatnot, but minorities suffer miserably. The American constitution is wonderful, but we've seen since September 11, 2001, that it has really fallen by the wayside very, very quickly in terms of all the fancy freedoms and protections that Americans used to brag about. In the same context, the Canadian Constitution has stood tall.
Well, I think in some respects Canada is on the leading edge of human rights because of the Charter. I don't think we should be too smug about that. We borrowed a lot when we built our Charter. We borrow a lot as judges when we interpret the Charter from other legal systems. But we've also seen that in other countries, they are looking to Canada and the Canadian experience under the Charter for guidance.
We have a lot to be proud of as a nation internationally with respect to our Charter of Rights. We have a lot to do domestically if we are going to, truthfully be what we claim to be.
Like many historical documents, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms will be tested over time. As technology and society evolve, charter issues unimaginable in 1982 will make their way into Canadian headlines.
When you ask questions as to future challenges, you may be asking now not for analysis but for clairvoyance. And probably the key issue that we're going to have to really deal with is what is the scope and what are the limits of the power of judges as against those of legislators.
You know, as judges, we're not supposed to speculate too openly about what's going to happen in the future, but I think we're bound to see charter issues in terms of the sanctity of life, various forms of invasion of privacy or threats to privacy posed by technology. Those issues are bound to play a role. I think the whole changing nature of medical care and the rights of people who require medical care, the rights of disabled people, the rights of vulnerable people who are vulnerable because of that. I think that those are bound to raise issues for us.
When we look at just, these recent developments, such as the same-sex marriages, as being, it's a significant change to this country and to the world. In fact, we're already seeing cases now coming about in the United States, and they're referring to the Canadian system and what's happening here. There's going to be things in the future that are related to biotechnology, the cloning of genes and these sorts of things that are going to be coming back to the Charter as an issue in the court process.
The Charter was written with the input of Canadians from across the country, representing diverse ethnic, social, and religious groups. Though broad in scope, the document continues to meet the challenges of Canada's changing society. From the frontiers of science to the country's courtrooms and classrooms, the Charter of Rights remains relevant today.
Now, I chose to bring the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms with me to space. I brought it along because it inspires me and is a reminder of what my country has achieved. We can take pride in the human rights enjoyed in Canada today. Thanks to our Charter, human rights have become an intrinsic part of our Canadian identity. To this day, the Charter continues to defend the principles of freedom and dignity that define us as Canadians.
As a Canadian citizen,
I think the challenge is to ensure that along with the rights that each Canadian citizen can exercise through the Charter, we also have to underscore the responsibilities, because rights without responsibilities create an environment of anarchy. And I think that rights with responsibilities make us a stronger society. So we need to focus on the rights, but we also need to underscore the common collective responsibilities.
There's always a bit of a trade-off in rights with rights. You can't have an absolute right and have a society with people interacting with each other. One person's right has to take into account another person's right.
Well, the Charter is a critical document. It is a restriction on the power of government. And so it's always coming up. It comes up every day.
With its extensive rights and guarantees, the Charter's greatest accomplishment is the protection it grants minorities. Where differences of race, religion, or sexual preference exist, individuals and groups need not fear the majority.
For if individuals and minorities do not feel protected against the possibility of the tyranny of the majority, if French-speaking Canadians or Native peoples, or new Canadians do not feel they will be treated with justice, it is useless to ask them to open their hearts and minds to their fellow Canadians.
If we're going to continue to prosper as a highly diverse society, I really believe that the Charter helps to create unity within our rich diversity.
The young Canadians, their reference point is the Charter, more than the flag, more than the national anthem, and they talk about the values behind the Charter: fairness, tolerance, multiculturalism, bilingualism, all of those elements that are shaping our Canadian psyche.
Much more than a document or legislation, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms represents Canada's principles and values. Entrenched in the Constitution, it's a democratic cornerstone heralded around the world. From freedom of religion to language and equality rights, legal challenges will continue to make headlines in the future as the Charter protects groups and individuals and celebrates the many faces of Canada.